Hey, what's up, guys? Might be a slightly controversial review, but screw it. Let's get right into it. Death Wish. So Death Wish is about a man who is a surgeon who has a loving wife and daughter at home. And one night when he's on call at the hospital, robbers break into his house, steal all of his stuff, kill his wife, and severely injure his daughter. So now, because the cops aren't doing anything, we have a story about a man that takes the law into his own hands and gets revenge on the people that hurt him and his family. So let me start off the review with this. Let's get into something controversial, right off the bat. Why the f not? This movie right now on Rotten Tomatoes has a very low score. I think it's at like a 13 or a 19%. I can't remember which one. And before I go any further with this review, I just wanted to put it out there that I did like this movie. But I do have a couple of theories and opinions on why this movie has such a low Rotten Tomatoes score from the critics. My uncle told me his opinion and his theory about why the critics are basically panning this movie on Rotten Tomatoes, and I gotta say, I agree with him. He said he thinks there are two kinds of critics on Rotten Tomatoes right now with this movie. The first kind, in our opinion, are obviously the gun control nuts that hate this movie just because they hate that it glorifies gun violence and because they hate guns. And they think they know everything about guns, and that's the reason that they need to be banned. Even though they've probably never shot a gun in their life and have never had any gun classes whatsoever. The second kind are people that actually did like this movie, but they don't want to say that they like this movie. And we think that's because of all the mass shootings that have been happening lately, and they just didn't want to be controversial and say that they actually liked a movie that glorifies gun violence because, they wanted to keep it pretty PC. But hey, that's all a theory and just opinions. I could be totally wrong, but the last time I looked at the critic and the audience score for this movie, they were vastly different. Like Star Wars Last Jedi, vastly different. So I don't know if that says anything, but hey, I'm just putting it out there. But now that that's over, let's get into the actual meat of the movie and what I liked and what I didn't like. First off, let's start off with what I didn't like, because there's probably more that I liked about this movie than what I didn't like. The first thing I didn't always like about this movie was there was a lot of out-of-place comedy. And what I mean by that was there was a lot of comedy in scenes where there probably shouldn't have been any. For example, the head detective, Dean Norris, in this movie, him and his partner go to this murder scene where Bruce Willis's character just gunned down like 2 or 3 people. And you think that would be like a very serious scene and a very serious moment where there shouldn't have been any jokes. But no, after they're done at the crime scene and are just walking away from it, his partner decides to joke with him like, hey, want to go eat some donuts? You need some bear claws? It just kind of seemed out of place, and it didn't seem like a very opportune moment for that kind of humor. Let alone a cop cliche about donuts, because that's basically what it was. Now, sometimes the out-of-place comedy for me actually did work just because it was such a hard left turn from what was going on in the scene that it was actually pretty funny. But sometimes I just found myself sitting there like, what the hell was that? Why is that part in here? But yeah, anyways, like I said, some of the comedy just was not used very wisely in some scenes. The second thing I didn't like about this movie, and because it was just so cliche, was there was at least 1 or 2 red herrings in this movie for who might have been the bad guy. And I gotta tell you, I just didn't buy those red herrings for a second. I never thought for a second that, ooh, maybe it is like one of these guys that's kind of close to Bruce Willis. Maybe he's the mastermind behind all of this. I just didn't buy it at all. You know that none of these red herrings are going to be the bad guys because they just try and set them up to be the bad guys so much that you can just tell from a mile away that all they are red herrings. Alright, now let's move on really quickly to some stuff that I did like. First, if you are a gore fan, like I am, you're gonna like this movie. It's directed by Eli Roth, and he's one of the best people for a gore movie. He's really into that stuff. So if you wanted to see this movie just for its gore, I think you'll be satisfied. Another thing I liked was, for the most part, except for maybe like a couple lines, they kept politics out of the movie a lot. They didn't choose to go all the way and, glorify gun violence, even though that's kind of what this movie is, but really it's just a man that's trying to get revenge because he's lost everything. So they do a good job at showing that this is just a very desperate man that wants to get revenge, and then after he gets revenge, he's never going to do this stuff again. So they're not totally glorifying gun violence, but they didn't totally go to the other side either, where they just wanted to show you the whole time that guns are bad, guns are bad, guns are bad, okay? So I appreciated that about this movie. It was just a straightforward revenge story, and that's it. You know, throughout the movie, they did, splice in a bunch of, news clips from people on the radio and people doing podcasts like Sway in the Morning. I think that's what his show is called. And, they chimed in. They had their opinions on whether this guy is a hero or if he's just a criminal. But even with that, they showed both sides. They showed the one guy that really liked Bruce Willis, his character, and thought that he was a hero. But then on the other hand, they had Sway saying how he thought this guy was just a criminal and he should be arrested. So, they had both opinions. It wasn't just one-sided. Another thing I liked about this movie was the acting, for the most part. At times, Bruce Willis, his character can be a little wooden. But then for most of the rest of the time, he and his co-stars are corny in just the best way for this movie. This is a movie where you have to suspend your disbelief, quite a bit. A man's family gets killed. He's never shot a gun in his life, at least from what I could see in the movie. And then when he decides he wants to get revenge on these people, basically overnight he becomes a very skillful assassin. But for a movie like this, you have to suspend your disbelief quite a bit. And when you have a movie that's this outrageous, in my opinion, hammy acting, goes hand in hand with that. So did I mind when Vincent D'Onofrio or Bruce Willis or Dean Norris were just chewing the scenery and were really hamming up their performances? No, I really didn't. It just kind of added to the movie for me. It made it funnier, honestly. Another thing I like about this movie was the special effects. Eli Roth is all about the practical effects, and I'm glad he's one of the few directors in Hollywood that still does practical effects, because most of it has just gone to complete CGI fake bullshit. So it's nice to see a director still want to use the tried and true version of special effects. And yeah, I don't know what else I should say about this movie. The action was really good. I liked it. I mean, some people thought that this movie was kind of boring and it just kind of dragged on, but I was invested the whole time. I was having a blast. I hear a lot of critics saying, with everything that's been going on lately with all these mass shootings, was this really a good time to release this movie? And my rebuttal to that is there ever a good time for this kind of movie? I mean, it shows a guy taking matters into his own hands and basically becoming a criminal and killing the people that hurt him. So I think if this movie was to come out when there was nothing happening in the real world, I think people would still find a reason to hate it. But hey, that's just my opinion. Maybe I don't give people enough credit, but I haven't seen anything else to the contrary, so I'm going to give Death Wish a B-. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.